All right, episode 43, Social Witnessing with our new friend, cartoonist and video game art director, Geoff Coates. What's up, Geoff? How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Good. So this is our third attempt. We've had some technical difficulties, which is a sign of the times right now with what's going on in the world.
Absolutely.
We
Yes.
started we started talking just a little bit about we're all kind of in a weird headspace here, having been glued to the news for the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Um,
Me too. I've been watching it nonstop for the last 24, 48 hours. It's unbelievable.
It is. And for you, especially doing a lot of cartoons with some political undertones, you said since Trump kind of came into office. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about and maybe your history a little bit with it as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always the cartooning that I do has always been sort of a side gig. It hasn't played much of a part in my work in video games, but I've always drawn on the side. And I've left the political stuff out usually when I post stuff to social media up until 2016. I didn't want to. I don't know. I just didn't want to put out anything that was alienating to people. That's how I felt about it at the time.
Hmm.
And then when Trump was elected, I lost my mind. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that they were electing this guy. And, I was born in the States and I grew up here in Canada. But I'd always followed politics south of the border and was, really heavily invested when Obama was elected. I thought that was the greatest thing. And then for this guy to come along and actually win, it, something went off in my head and I started drawing Trump cartoons around that time, and because he was so offensive, just visually, amongst other
Yeah.
things, policy wise, it. I kind of snapped, and so I just started doing a lot of cartoons about Trump, and mostly just silly stuff, to my mind, mostly based on how pompous and ridiculous he is. I just couldn't believe that they hadn't gotten past the fact that this guy was a third rate reality show host. I mean, that's all he is.
Right.
Hmm.
and and why are we still not just talking about that? Like, they're taking him seriously as a president, and it just drives me crazy. So anyway,
A- And a failed businessman at multiple businesses that he was handed.
on every level
Yeah.
failed. I mean, he's failed at everything. I mean, he's failed upward to such a ridiculous degree. It's really maddening.
So, what was the reaction like when you kind of made that shift and started posting those cartoons?
There's a lot of people. Well, obviously, him being polarizing. The drawings were a little polarizing as well. Um, a lot of people started following me then, and a lot of people started either unfollowing me or just trolling me,
Right.
Yeah.
which at first was a little upsetting, and then after a while, it was like, just bring it on. It's fine.
Yeah, I was going to ask what that's like to kind of get the wrath of the political sphere.
I Yeah, just a bunch of thoughts on that. I mean, I think a lot of them were young guys. I mean, I would always click on their link just to sort of see who it was who was trolling me, and almost always it was some young white dude.
Hmm.
And you know, I had been thinking for the longest time, like, the next generation is the generation that's going to fix all this nonsense. And then I started seeing all these guys, and I thought, well, maybe not completely. They won't fix it, but because there's a bunch of everyone's just conditioned by whatever they're in, and I think a lot of these guys are just uh, they're just brought up in this sense of privilege and this sense of like they're listening, they're in their own bubbles basically. And that was something else that I noticed, is we are all in our bubbles, and we are all sort of, it's very hard to talk to each other. I started by like trying to engage with these guys and change minds and tell them where I'm coming from and have a discussion, but
How'd that work out for you?
Not so good. Not so good. It doesn't work. I changed no minds, which
Yeah.
was disappointing, and I would get so angry and wrapped up in it and upset by it that you know I just started blocking everybody. The number of people that I have blocked is is legion. There's like thousands of people that every time it started, I would get some terrible comment and I would just block people, and so now it's in the thousands.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, and now I don't even mind if they want to like make a comment. A bunch of other people will jump on them. It's good for my algorithm. Like I don't care. Say whatever you want. Tend to go away after a while. If it's really egregious and terrible, I'll block them. But
So are you
uh,
still getting some of that hate anytime you post? Because you've been doing it.
every now and
Yeah.
again, yeah. I've switched focus a little bit away from Trump towards a lot more Vancouver issues. But every now and again, I'll post I'll post something and someone will jump on it. What I do find though is they've gotten a little. I think they've gotten a little quieter. Um,
Hmm.
there's less. There's less bravado in it. There's a lot more defensiveness to it. And whenever I post something, like I posted a drawing of Trump as Sailor Moon for some reason, and I posted, he was saying drink bleach,
Oh, right.
as
Yeah.
he does, and then the kind of comments I would get from people were like, he didn't say that. They used to really defend him and say he was the greatest guy in the world. Now they're just telling us that he's not advocating drinking cleaning products. So that's the best they can do now.
Right. And with the actually the Vancouver stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the first things I saw from you, is the viral post you had maybe like 6 months ago on Reddit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the
You
weather
know,
one.
yeah. Do you want to talk about that one and what that experience was like?
Yeah, that. So what happened there was, so I work at a game company called Relic, and it's down on Fifth Avenue in Vancouver, and right next door is the offices for Vancouver is Awesome,
Mm,
and so like I say, I do a lot of the cartooning I do has always been on the side for me, aside from my regular job, and I'll draw in the mornings or the evenings or whatever. Anyway, I was walking past Vancouver is Awesome's office one day, and I thought, um, what I'd like to do is maybe just do some drawings that they might want to carry. Um, that's maybe a little bit more Vancouver specific. I mean, I've lived here my whole adult life. I love Vancouver. And, I thought I had a lot of material that I could use for that. And I thought, well, this would be interesting. Like to get somebody to actually publish them apart from just putting it on Instagram would be kind of fun. So then I went away and I started drawing a few of them. And actually that one, the one about I was in a coffee shop with a group of friends, and we were talking about the fact that it was cold out, and everyone was talking about, well, it's not like really cold, but it's a wet cold, which I laughed at because it's what we always say in Vancouver when we're defending how cold it is to somebody who's actually living somewhere cold. Like the rest of Canada, I think just rolls its eyes at us some of the time.
right. So that was the cartoon with
That's
somebody essentially rolling their eyes,
that's right.
and
Really,
then
yeah.
the hipster saying, "But it's a wet cold."
Exactly. Because we all do it. We all say that. Anyway, so
Yeah.
that was one of the ones that I was doing for Vancouver is Awesome for a little package I was putting together, and I posted it early on my Instagram. Somebody on Reddit picked it up and started and put it up on Reddit, which without me knowing, and then it kind of went bananas, and someone pointed me towards the Reddit post, and then Vancouver is Awesome picked it up and they ran it, and one of their reporters emailed me and asked me about it, and I said, what's weird is I drew that for you guys. um, and so that led me to a conversation with Bob Kronbauer, who's the publisher at Vancouver's Awesome,
Right.
and he and I got together and chatted. He's a great guy, and we sort of clicked on a number of levels, and I asked if he'd want to use me as an editorial cartoonist for them, which he did, and that's what I've been doing since. So a lot of the Vancouver stuff has been came out of that one drawing.
Yeah, and I assume that was a much better interactions from that virality than any of the Trump stuff you've had.
I get a few trolls, but not that many. It's less.
People find a reason to troll anything.
People will find a reason to troll anything. There was a drawing I did that they just put on the cover of their last issue. It was this big drawing of Nigel, the deaf interpreter,
Right.
standing in the middle of a park surrounded by people. And so they ran that on the cover, and then I reposted it today, and people were jumping on me a little bit, saying like, "Hey, it's not that bad. People are spacing themselves out. Where have you seen this?" And I just want to tell them it's a cartoon, and it's not like I'm not doing journalism. This is not a reporting thing. It's just sort of an opinion. So yeah, but that's about as bad as it gets with Vancouver stuff.
Yeah, I saw that on your Instagram today, and it made me laugh. And for people who are saying it's not really like that, I mean, you should come downtown on a nice day and go to our beaches.
Yes.
Because this is why we're moving in 2 days. As part of the reason we're moving is because it's absolutely bananas here.
Really? Hey? Yeah.
It's.
I don't think other parts of the city are like that. I can see why people who might be in other parts of the city feel like everyone's doing a great job. But yeah, I was talking to my aunt and the other night, and she's like, "Oh wow, there's like 30, maybe 50 people down at the beach with sparklers having a dance party."
Wow. Yeah.
I was like, because she's watching from her balcony, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is downtown."
Yeah, and even like a little earlier on, when things like people have started relaxing a bit now, whether they should or shouldn't is a whole different debate, but people have.
Yeah.
Even before then, we would like drive to try and find some open space to take our son to, and the parks were all like full. Like people were kind of spaced, but they were full.
Yeah, we're just off Main Street on Quebec. And I don't know, I feel like it's really block by block. I mean, our lives since the lockdown or the self-quarantining happened have gotten, pretty small. It's sort of, we're here most of the time, and, we'll go down to the grocery store in the corner, or we go out to Pacific Spirit Park to take the dog for a walk. And that's pretty much what we've been doing for months now. And but every now and again, like I've had to go downtown a few times, and you're right, it feels like a different world. Everybody's experiencing their own reality in their neighborhoods, I think, because the level of interaction here on Main Street, like I'll be walking down the sidewalk, and if someone's coming down the sidewalk toward me, this is just on 14th Street, they'll like walk out into traffic, or they'll walk up on the grass. Like we give ourselves room here. Yeah. But I had to go downtown the other day, and it just seemed to me like nobody cared. Everyone was just like brushing past everybody. And it very quickly after all this started, I just became not used to that type of like closeness with people.
Yeah.
I think it's affecting us in this strange way that's going to take a really long time for us to get over. But yeah, I think everyone's got their own reality that they're dealing with, their own level of interaction that they're dealing with. I mean, before this, we were living in Chinatown. Before we lived here, we were living in a high-rise in Chinatown, and I can't imagine being in that building now with this going on. Like the apartments were small. There was always a lineup for the elevator. You were in elevators. I mean, the sidewalks were crowded, and to be, that's a lot of people are living like that now, and it's a good reminder that just how lucky I am to be living where I am.
I think it's probably hard too when you're living in a high rise to keep up with the social distancing, because it does, I think, wear you down. And like just yesterday, our elevators in our building are 2 different sizes, and one of them's quite small, and so you can't social distance in it. And I was in it, and someone tried to get in with me, and I asked him not to, and he actually swore at me.
Really?
Got really mad and swore at me. And I was just like, oh, even that, you start feel uncomfortable to even say, like, can you give me my distance?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's definitely depending on the neighborhood you live in. It's different.
Yeah, and the feeling of like they don't care, sort of. We've had that every time we've driven out and kind of seeing the sidewalks and in front of shops and liquor stores. it's just kind of the feeling you get away with. Like they can't really care that much
Mm-hmm.
because they don't seem worried.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
But they probably don't need to be worried. Like for us, like it's different. Like I have an autoimmune condition. I don't know to what degree it would affect me if I got sick, but I don't want to find out,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's different for everybody how they feel about their own personal health and the people around
Well,
them.
that's the tricky thing about this disease, I think, is that, you know, we're doing this not just for everyone can make their own assessment for themselves. And, you know, if you're younger and healthy, it's easy for you to think, you know, if I get it, I'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
But we're doing it for each other because, you know, like even with my wife and I, if I, you know, and now when we're sort of expanding our bubbles, I I'm gonna go meet a friend out in a park today. This would be the first person I've actually seen, you know, face to face in a long time. But we had to talk about that, and because I'm not just it's not just me going to meet him; it's her because I'm going to bring that back with me. And
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
for everybody, we all have to be cognizant of the fact that there are other people that we're going to be around that are going to have to like. So it's tricky that way, and because I think we've done so well in BC with you know flattening the curve and all of those things, it's easy for it to seem like it's not real or that it's
Yeah.
not a big deal because we haven't had the kind of cases they've had elsewhere. But and I think too, um, it does lead to a lot of frayed nerves. I,
Yeah.
if you're one of those people, like I might be, I'm not saying I am, but I might be one of those people who like just usually internally gets a little angry at people for not doing what I perceive to be the right thing to do. Like, you know, people who don't signal or people who don't like hold doors open for people, you know, any of those things normally back in the old world. Um, this disease and like the kind of behavior that we're expecting out of each other, if people aren't doing it, like that has flared up for me.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people, I see it all around. I mean, we'll go for a walk out in the woods, and we were out there one day, and we just saw arguments breaking out all over the place in the woods because like
Wow.
people are getting too close to each other or whatever it is, and it's we're all a little on edge right now, and that's you
Yeah.
know, and
Mm-hmm.
again, I think that's in BC where like we're doing really well. We don't, you know, we don't have like what's happening down in the States. We don't have crazy numbers of cases like they have back east,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's pretty sobering.
Yeah, I definitely couldn't imagine being somewhere where it's even worse. Like
Yes.
we were speaking to someone she's from Brazil and she has family in Brazil and it's the same. She was saying like every phone call she gets is someone saying, "Oh, I have it," or
Mm.
"So and so has it," and that's just I think that's rare here to actually, you know, we've only met a few people that have either had it or thought they had it. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
I,
different.
there was a something I heard in a podcast yesterday saying that I think it's like 14% of Americans now know somebody who's died from it,
Oh,
Oh
wow.
and
wow.
and I can't think of one person who's even had it yet. I mean,
Mm.
that's just how lucky we are here. Um,
And then if you go on social, everybody in like especially the Vancouver is awesome stuff. There's always a couple of people saying like this is a hoax. Nobody's getting sick.
right.
Like, why don't we open it up? You're smashing our economy for nothing. And it's like, well, why do you think we haven't had the outbreak?
Exactly. Because because we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, and we've had great
Yeah.
public
Mm-hmm.
messaging around it. So
Oh, but it hasn't gotten bad in 2 months. Yeah, that's not how viruses work. Like,
exactly.
you're not out of the
And I
woods.
don't think we
But
know enough about this disease either, right? Like
yeah.
No.
we don't even know. I was reading articles yesterday saying it's a blood disease, which they're starting to think it might be. Um,
Mm.
so I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
we just don't know.
Yeah, we really don't know almost anything.
Hmm.
I understand people's frustrations though, because if like financially this is
Yes.
impacting you like extremely, then you probably do feel like okay, like enough's enough. We just got to get out there and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's easy for me to sit here. Like I've been able to keep my job. My home situation is really good. Like it's been really nice. Like my kids are all grown and gone as well, so I don't even have, you know, the pressure of trying to like either homeschool a kid or, just
Mm-hmm.
to always be in that situation. So I can't complain about any of it. And there are so many people who just, they need to work, and or they're out of work, and it's scary. It's a scary financial situation for a lot of people to be in.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the States, there are all these numbers coming out, like unemployment might be like 25% now, and it's only going to get worse. And with everything that's going on there now, it's not just the pandemic anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and the pandemic might actually be really about to flare up there again in a few weeks with everybody out on the streets.
I would imagine. I think it's only a matter of time before, those pictures of like the people in the Ozark swimming pool go home, and
Yeah.
like all the people that have been out who are going to be diagnosed within, yeah, like you say, like in the next few weeks. And then that's I don't even know if that's the second wave, is it? It's sort of
Almost, yeah,
second half of the first wave, really.
yeah.
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 And yeah, I feel like, well, it will be hard to have a debate anymore whether this is real, quote unquote real or not real anymore. Like we're gonna find out one way or another. And I mean,
Yeah.
I don't really think it's much of an argument anymore, considering you could just look at countries all over the world where it
Yes.
is very real. But at least maybe for those small sects of Americans and some Canadians who just think this is overblown, well,
Yeah.
we're gonna find out one way or another.
Exactly. And it makes me wonder what it's going to look like going forward. I think the States is in for a long ride with this.
Hmm.
Um, and I think most of the rest of the world, well, yeah, most of the countries that have been affected so far, anyway, are going to come out of it a lot sooner. And and us being right next to them, like, what does that look like? Do we keep the border
Hmm.
closed and we just sort of like open up more trade with other countries? Like, what's going to happen? Are we just going to hermetically seal off the United States? I mean, I don't know. It's everything is just so unknown right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Canada's it's very interesting to see, like, if we're just gonna, continue being on top of it
Mm-hmm.
and have leadership that is really dedicated to it. We've been really lucky, especially in BC,
Absolutely.
that our leadership has really been full throttle in support of, keeping everybody safe, as opposed to, yeah, just folding to economic pressures.
Exactly.
That's kind of nice to say. I don't feel like people often say, "Hey, my government's doing a good job."
Yeah.
Like it's not a common thing people
But
say.
that's,
So
like, why not? I mean, like, I feel like in Canada, we should be really proud of how our government's acted for the most part. Like,
Mhm.
um, even Ford in Ontario, I think he's made a bunch of missteps, but you know, if I'm watching American news all the time and then I watch him, I think you're doing a good job, buddy. Nice job. Like, uh, but we should all like this, and again, like having drawn a lot of American political cartoons and then read a lot of American political stories, the inherent distrust of government down there is
Mhm.
like, this is what happens.
Mhm.
Trump has sown, mistrust in the media, and there's this core distrust of politics down there, and you end up with nobody delivering a consistent, decent message, as opposed to here in BC, where the thing I've loved here is uh, Adrian Dix and Bonnie Henry. They have been sort of like handed the authority to manage everything about this crisis, like whether things are open or closed, what the messaging is. They're doing all the press around it. Um, and so it's been really consistent, and everybody has been aware of where we're at in things and what we're supposed to be doing. In fact, even as they've opened things up, they've been really consistent around like how we need to manage it.
Mhm.
And that goes such a long way. I read a great thing about how in BC, like the way that we've handled it has been really old school. It's just been information. Get information out to the public, get information to the hospitals and doctors that's consistent and early, and that's what's going to do it.
Yeah, and I think we had 2 days of no deaths the last 2 days, if I remember reading that right.
Yes, yeah, and I think 11
And,
cases last week or something. That was it.
right.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing.
Yeah, so we're doing well, but then there's the question of, now that we're reopening and people are filling the beaches, what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think this is the part nobody really knows about, right? I mean, we know what a
Right.
lockdown looks like, and we know what completely open looks like, but what does partially open look like? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yeah,
and especially with the schools reopening, which
yes,
we've ranted on before, it seems an unnecessary risk with so little information.
yeah. Why open? I don't understand this. Why are they opening for a month? Like,
Yeah, the conspiracy theorists are out that they want to infect us all and get this herd immunity going on faster.
Start with the parents.
oh, is it the herd
Oh,
immunity theory? That's good. That's good.
that's one, and
Also a test run for
a
September.
test run.
Yeah.
But just by calling it a test run, you're admitting that you have no clue what's going
Yeah.
on.
Exactly.
So, well, didn't I say that a dry run for
Yeah,
September? It's like they're calling it a dry
yeah.
run. So it's
We posted a little rant I had a few episodes ago. We posted it on Instagram where the premier said, like, we would not have opened unless we were sure that everyone would be safe. And my rant was essentially like, how could you even say that?
Yeah.
Like, you're not sure of anything. Nobody's sure of anything.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't know it all, and I don't see why they're even even playing with it. I mean, it's
Yeah, it makes no sense.
no. I mean, like, you know, in my industry in games, we've all gone home. We've all started working from home, and initially the thought was it was going to be a couple weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
we all went home thinking it was going to be 2 weeks, and then it was going to be, well, maybe a month. And now we're talking about, you know, sometime in the fall, maybe. And it only makes sense because we're not going to get any kind of treatment or vaccine or anything for this. We don't know enough about the disease as it stands, but there's not going to be any kind of treatment for this for what, a year? So why? And then if you look at the practical realities of it, I don't know how schools are going to do it, because in our building, you can't have more than one person in a bathroom. And so you basically allow the number of people into the building that can have their own bathroom. And that's like, in our building, it's 20. How are they going to do that in schools? Like, all those kids using the washrooms, like, that's supposed to be a really bad spreader for it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, trying to stay positive, but I don't really see how it all kind of gets reopened up anytime soon. There is the hope that, you know, since we have the entire scientific community working on a vaccine, we might be able to break some records as far as how fast we can get some treatment, at least partial treatment.
Yeah.
And they are in human trials in a bunch of vaccine. But most of the experts are saying still, even with all that, it's still not going to be anytime soon.
And a year is like, that's breakneck speed, right? That's really fast.
That's fast.
So
yeah.
I'm also like, I don't know if I'm being overly optimistic or a little naive, but I'm kind of just hoping that because we have so few cases in BC, if we could get it under control and get anybody who, like, if anybody who might spread it just doesn't somehow, and we let it pass, and then we're very cautious of, you know, opening borders and doing things like that.
We'd have to be on full isolation lockdown as far as borders.
Well, I don't know, because I think they're down to one case on the island now, like on Vancouver Island. You know, and a lot of the smaller communities don't have it. So it's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being naive, but I'm just hoping, like, in BC, I would love for things to open up again in September.
Absolutely.
And just be like, okay, we have to stay away from all the other provinces and be very cautious.
Nobody from Alberta is welcome.
You stay there. We'll stay here.
Yeah.
Till there's a vaccine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be we probably can't travel for until this is all over, and closing the borders off would be nice. But I do think you're right in the sense that I think I heard Bonnie Henry say at one point that, what this means, with the number of cases being as low as it is, that there is very little COVID actually out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go out, and this is something I need to remember, because otherwise I act like a crazy person. Like when somebody goes past me on the trail who's jogging, I just start like turning my head away and going, and I don't want to be a crazy person. So to just, to realize that there's not that much, there's probably not that much out there. So I'm probably okay, generally speaking, is a good thing to remember. And I think there will be some sort of, I think there's going to be some sort of like middle ground that we try and strike over the next year and a bit. Like if we can put some more effort, and like the province can put some more money into like figuring out better systems for homeschooling, better ways, for work. I was thinking, we can't get, obviously in my company, we can't get everyone back in the office, but is there a way that offices could kind of switch up the way they're looking at things, and just, maybe what small groups go in for like half a day to do the meetings that they need to do together, and then go back and do work on their own. And I think a lot of those things are going to be changes that just sort of like inform everything after COVID, right? I think the way that we work is going to change. The way that we go to school is going to change. And I think those could be some of the positives that we get out of this.
And contact tracing is something that's kind of the hot issue right now. The government, Canadian government, has said they're working on that and that they think it's important. Now there's the issue of privacy. When everyone's essentially put on an app and they have everything you've done, then that raises other concerns. But I just read today, and this might have actually been on Vancouver Awesome, I can't remember, that there's a Canadian app developer that's come out with an app that they've been working on for the last couple of months that eliminates some of that. They don't store any of the data, they don't collect it, they don't share it, even after you've been listed as a sick person.
Yeah, I saw that.
But that they can send an alert to anyone that you've been within range of after you're listed as sick, without collecting the data. So that would be amazing if we could get that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd sign up for that, no problem.
Right. And they said they needed like something like 60% of the population at least for it to really make a difference.
Oh, really?
So it'll be interesting to see what the privacy debate, and if they can convince people. And that's what they said. They said it's going to be tough to get 60% if you can't convince people that their information is secure.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's got to be a huge concern for a lot of people. I feel like I'm getting traced all the time anyway, so I'm fine. Just take my data.
Yeah. That's such a hard debate. Like I was telling Yaniv this, that like I couldn't get into my Google Drive for work, and I couldn't get into all these things. My computer had half shut down, and it was because my anti-tracking software decided Google was an enemy and was like, this site tracks you too much and wouldn't let me access anything. And I'm like, isn't that the truth? Like, I'm just constantly being tracked, everything I do.
Well, that's the funny thing. I think we're already being tracked. We aren't that aware of it. It's all sort of under the hood. And I think there was some article I read in the New York Times that was about exactly this, and about where your data is going. There was one company that actually purchased this data, and they could track a person, like every person's like they chose at random their entire day. They went to this coffee shop, and then they went over here, and then they went into this building, and it's I mean that's out there now anyway.
Yeah, every time we have this discussion, I end up the end is me yelling, it's too late.
Yeah.
It's already too late. Like that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
There's nothing to worry about now. Don't do anything super illegal and just hope it doesn't become draconian.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Deal with
or
that.
Or stop carrying a phone and just use cash.
Yeah, don't
wear a mask.
Just be off the grid.
Yeah. Move out to the boonies and build a hut.
I'm sure even if you wore a mask, it can still recognize you just by the eyes and the snippet of your face now.
Maybe. Well, I'm sure they had a lot of in China. There was a lot of reports of all the facial tracking stuff that they
Yes.
had
Yeah.
put out. So
I
yeah.
don't know if it's true, but I saw this article that showed how you can hack facial recognition software and security cameras. You paint one of those like sort of grid camouflage patterns, like just a chunk of it on your face,
Mm.
and it throws the camera off and it can't recognize it as a face.
Oh, interesting.
Oh,
You got to walk
interesting.
around with that on your face, but you know.
Yeah. So suddenly everybody's going to be wearing camouflage
Right.
face.
You'll know if somebody's face is painted. You'll know
Right.
what
You
they're
know
up
you're up to no good.
This is the world we're living in now.
Right.
to.
He's, yeah, I wanted to ask, you mentioned this earlier that you've been in Vancouver for 30
Hmm.
years. I'm curious, kind of in reflecting back, what are some things that stand out as having gotten improved a lot and what's gotten worse in your opinion?
Um, hmm. Well, Vancouver's always, I don't know, I don't know if I could say off the top of my head, like what's improved. The older you get, the crankier you get. But
Mhm.
Vancouver has always been my favorite city in the world. I mean, I've traveled a bunch, and I've loved going to different cities, but I still I know what I got here. I mean, it's the most beautiful city I've ever been in, and there's really nowhere else I would rather live. It's really different. I moved here in '89, and I was 18 years old, and I grew up in Kelowna,
Hmm.
and my entire childhood, the only thing I ever wanted to do was move to Vancouver. My grandparents lived here. We'd come down here, and I just loved it. And I hated Kelowna.
Yeah,
Sorry, Kelowna, you kind of
that's
suck. But
cool.
um, and so when I moved down, um, I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a job. Uh, I just wanted to move down here, and I had a buddy whose couch I could crash on for a little while. I think that's almost impossible now
Mhm.
for
Hmm.
an 18-year-old to move to this city. And within, I kind of missed the mark when I moved down here, and I moved to Wally, which was not Vancouver.
Right.
Hot tip for people coming to Vancouver: don't move to Wally first. It's not a good start. Um, and But then within a year of that, I moved to Kits, and I had an apartment in Kits, and my own apartment in Kits, and had a job, and was doing okay. And that's impossible for
Yeah.
kids now to do. I mean, I walk down to JJ Bean every day and chat with the baristas, the kids who are working there, and that's one of their jobs. And
Hmm.
they have two, maybe three jobs, two, maybe three roommates. They're living over on the other side of town, wherever it's affordable, and so the expense of the city is the thing that I think is a real shame.
Right. And it's such a strange debate because like in a way you get it because like we said, like there's nowhere else we'd rather live. And every
Mm-hmm.
time we've thought about moving because of price, it's like, well, where? Everywhere else feels like a step. I don't know about down, but it doesn't seem like something we want to do.
Yeah,
And so, like, yeah, if we feel like that, then lots of other people feel like that, and that's why things are so expensive.
absolutely. Yeah, and I I had to move out when my kids were born. We moved out to Port Moody because back then it was affordable and we could buy a house and have a yard for the kids and stuff. But that quickly got unaffordable, and
Hmm.
so that's out of range now. And so people are moving further and further out. And actually, Bob Kronbauer, the publisher for Vancouver is Awesome, ran a story a little while ago about he had to move out to Chilliwack.
Hmm.
Hmm.
This is the guy who's running Vancouver is Awesome,
Right.
Yeah.
and it's that's the thing. We love the city, but in a lot of ways, it doesn't really love us back.
Yeah, that's what we're facing too. We're actually moving to Chilliwack as well.
Mm.
Coquitlam?
Coquitlam. Oh, not to Chilliwack.
No,
Coquitlam.
Coquitlam.
Kidding
Potato,
me.
potato.
We've looked,
Coquitlam.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but
Same out there.
Yeah.
we looked everywhere, and yeah, Chilliwack was one of the options just because it's more affordable. Even yeah, more than the affordability, you have more space, which is something we were looking
Hmm.
for.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I hope. I mean, right now I'm renting, and we're thinking of buying a place, but we know that when we do, it's going to be tiny.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I don't know. Maybe some of the regulations that the city's brought in or the province has brought in around house ownership and maybe the COVID stuff, changes
Hmm.
changes some of this. I don't know, but something's got to give. Otherwise we're just going to be one of those cities that is a great place to, you know, I don't know, invest in, but not
Yeah.
necessarily live in for a lot of people, and it makes it very unlivable for them. I don't know how these restaurants are getting all, how they've before COVID, there was a lot of restaurants that were having trouble finding people to work there because a lot of people who work those type of jobs can't afford to live in the city.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
And if your commute is an hour and a half to make
yes,
$15 or less an hour,
exactly, exactly.
yeah.
So I'd love to see the city do more to make it more affordable for young people to stay in and um, to buy homes in, those type of things. The other thing that really drives me crazy, when I came here, there was an amazing music scene. There was a lot of clubs. There was a lot of like venues. Granted, I'm older now and I don't really know about them if they're there, but I think they all went away. Um,
Hmm.
and so I think there's a bit of again, it goes back to, I think, expense, sort of a situation where a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these types of places have closed down, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen, like, living downtown for the last 12 or so
Mm-hmm.
years, like we see the turnover in brick and mortar like every day when we're walking
Oh,
out.
Denman Street is the
Yeah.
worst. Like,
Denman,
yeah.
Davie
Yeah.
Street, Granville Street, you just see that as the years have gone by, it's just been increasingly difficult for anybody to stay open unless there's some like big
Yeah,
franchise.
it becomes that more chain, that big box, the big.
Right, it's just
Mhm.
the Starbucks, McDonald's, Subways,
That's
kind of
right.
like, what's happening in a lot of places in the world. We're not unique in that respect.
Yeah,
But
it seems to be everywhere. I mean, that certainly, if you go to New York, which we like to go to or have like to go to every couple of years. I mean, Midtown or Times Square has gone from like small shops to just big. All the big
mhm.
chains
Mhm.
are there, and that's about it. Oh,
Yeah, because nobody can survive the rent.
exactly.
It's just
Yeah,
impossible.
yeah,
Even with the traffic, yeah, not feasible.
yeah, totally.
Well, before we go, I did want to touch a bit on your video game career because that's something really interesting. And
Yeah.
I've been a video game fan my whole life, and our son is like, well, right now he's playing video games right now, and he's a little obsessive.
Nice.
So you want to tell us a little bit about what your specific job entails and kind of what you've done throughout your career?
Yeah, so I started in games in '95 actually, and I was working at the time. I was working for Adbusters magazine, um,
Mm.
Oh,
and I love that response. I always get that response from people in Vancouver. I say Adbusters, oh, I know that one.
Ah,
Yeah,
I
oh,
used to read
yeah.
that.
yeah,
So I was working for them,
we're
and
woke.
they're obviously like a nonprofit, and it was it was a poverty job. But I was hired as their quote unquote art director, and what it was there was a government grant that paid my salary to train me to work on computers, which were kind of new. Um, and then Adbusters would get, if they paid half my salary, would they would get an employee. So it was kind of a government program that got me in there. Anyway, so we're working on the magazine, and then uh, I was hiring artists for this issue that we were working on, and one of them worked out at Electronic Arts. And I didn't know anything about it actually, so I went out there to meet with her, and I saw this office where there was money. Like people were artists, and they were working in an office, and they were making games, and it was incredible. So I applied, um, and I didn't know anything about. I mean, I had a ColecoVision when I was a kid, but that was about it. And then,
Mhm.
so I didn't know much about it, but I knew how to draw. And because of Adbusters, I knew a little bit about computers, and back then that was all you needed. So they hired me, and I started doing interface design on a baseball game, a Japanese baseball game, actually.
Do you remember the title?
3DO. It was a 3DO baseball, J League Baseball. It was called.
Okay.
And I didn't know anything about baseball. Didn't know anything about Japanese baseball, but that didn't seem to matter. So we just, nobody on the team seemed to. It seemed like at the time. But so I did that game, and then we had our own baseball franchise in EA. It was called Triple Play. So I worked on that over the next 5 versions of the game. And while I was doing that, I went from doing interface design to modeling some of the stadiums to eventually being the lead artist, mainly because I was just sort of interested in all aspects of the game and good at sort of corralling people a little bit. And then I switched over to SSX, which was their snowboarding game. And
it's a very well-known game.
Yeah, that was really fun to work on, and that one I ended up being an art director on that one by the 3rd version of it. And so I was at EA for 10 years, and had worked my way up to being an art director by the time I left. And then I kind of bopped around a bunch of studios in town over the next while. Did it mostly with like 2 years here, 2 years there. You work on a project and you move on, because the industry in Vancouver is so insular that you just sort of, people work in one place and they go to the next. I think I moved around a little bit more than some do, but I went to propaganda, and then I went to Nexon had a studio here called Human Nature, and that was really fun. We didn't actually put any games out while I was there, but it was a great studio. And then 2008 hit, and the whole industry kind of tanked. And a lot of people actually left the city to go work in studios in Montreal or down in California or whatever. I was really lucky. I was able to stay in town, and I went to go work for Next Level, and then back to EA, and then yada yada yada. Now I'm at Relic, and I've been at Relic for like 3 years, and it's a great studio. We do RTS games, so like strategy games, and Relic has been Relic's been in Vancouver for, I think it's 20 years now. And in fact, the guy who started Relic was a junior programmer that I was working with at EA. He was this young guy, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go start my own company." And I'm like, "Sure you are, buddy. Whatever." And he did, and I'm working for him now. In fact, I've worked for him specifically a couple times. So,
did he like hold it over your head in like a joking way? He's like, "I told you."
Oh, he didn't remember me at all. Like, he was way too successful to remember the smug artist he was working with.
Wow.
So yeah, so he's done well, and and Relic is a great company, and we just moved into new offices this past year, and we're over in the Mount Pleasant area, just on 5th. And it's been, video games has been a great career for me.
Our son who's 6 now. He often says, we ask him if we talk about it, we'll say like something like, "What do you want to do for your job one day?" And he says he wants to make video games. Well, he also says he wants to build robots or make video games.
You can do both.
So do you think what side do you think is more important right now, the art side or the technical computer knowledge and modeling and all that?
I think either path is valid. It really depends on what you're into, In fact, if you're a hybrid person, if you're a technical artist, and those are people who can kind of like translate the code side of things for the artists and write tools for them and figure things out for them. That's like the premier, as far as I'm concerned, sort of role to be in. What's happened, I think, in the time of my career, it's gone from when you were an artist, when I started, you basically begged programmers for anything that you could get. programmers were gods, and they were like, they controlled everything. And because the hardware was so weak, and so you're working with very few colors, and you're working with, you know, not a lot of memory to make things, and it's flipped. And so now artists can do whatever they want, basically, and there's very few constraints on art. And there are still some, obviously, but it's not like it used to be. So so either path is good. A hybrid between the two is great. But really, I think, you know, for your son, it's like, what's he drawn towards? I think that there's I think it's valid on either side. Programmers, obviously, I mean, programmers right now are in rare supply, especially in Vancouver, because the tech scene in Vancouver is changing a lot. We have a lot of companies that are not game companies that have moved into Vancouver, and we find in the games industry, we're competing with a lot of other industries for programmers now, which is not necessarily the case for artists, right? Like, artists tend to stay in games. Sometimes they can switch over to film and do a bit of film work for a lot of the effects houses that are in town. But for the most part, they stay in the games industry. Programmers can go anywhere. And that's why hiring programmers is such a, it's so hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think there's anything to the notion that it's getting, programming is commoditized, that it's like, you know, the parents who have been pushing their kids to do programming for the last 10, 15 years, it might not be as valued of a profession
I
later?
don't see that in the industry I'm in. Like I say, programming is, programmers are in short supply and are really coveted. If we could get some rendering programmers in every game studio, are super rare and hard to find, and everybody wants them. So so I think programming is just looking like a great sort of like direction to go in for a career. It's a completely different, you know, mindset, obviously, but yeah, like they're needed.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, for now, he's more into playing than doing
That's probably
any kind of work. So maybe he'll just be a professional streamer.
yeah. Also apparently good money in that too.
Yeah, a new career choice that wasn't available to
My
us.
son told me about 12, 13 years ago, when he was, I don't know, I guess he was about 12 or 13. I said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And he goes, "I want to be a YouTube person." I lost my mind. I was like, "There's no way you're going to try and do that. There's no money in that." And then I realized over the years, oh no, there's a lot of money in that. Oh, okay.
Some of the most well-paid kids in the world are on YouTube.
Yeah. I wish I had encouraged him. I could retire.
So before we go, we usually ask people kind of at the end, what's been maybe one positive thing that you've taken out of this COVID experience that you'll kind of keep with you going forward?
Slowing down, you know, being able to, doing less and enjoying it more. I think, you know, my day is pretty small. I go to work, you know, over in that chair, and then, you know, once a day, my wife, who's here, and I will take our dog and we'll go for a walk. So we get to connect a lot more. And, you know, I mean, everybody I've talked to has said the same thing. We'll say, like, "What are you going to do today?" I'm like, you know, I might fix the hinges on the bathroom door. That's the thing. And that's like the one thing. And that's a big deal now, because it used to be, we used to run around doing 10,000 things. And I really enjoyed slowing down a little bit. And I hope coming out of this that we all find a way to keep a little bit of that. And also, you know, it's made me connect more with, you know, my dad. He's almost 90. He lives in Kelowna. He's doing fine, but, you know, I want to check in on him more, and I've certainly been talking to him a lot more, and it's been great. And I think I've, connecting with the people who are important to me has been another nice side benefit of all this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very well said. And, if not for COVID, we wouldn't be connecting with individuals like you, and we really appreciate that and want to thank you very much for coming on and for sharing some of your story with us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and you're welcome to come back anytime.
Absolutely. All right, guys.
All right, have a great day.
You too.
Thanks so much, Geoff.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, no, sorry. One last thing I forgot to mention. If anybody wants to follow your work or get in touch with you, is there a way for them to do that?
Oh, yeah. Instagram, I'm Geoff.Coates. That's GEOFF.Coates, COATES, on Instagram. Or you can go to my weirdly named website, SatoChicken.com. That's a long story. That's another hour I could do on that.
It's a great website. I've gone down the hole and I really enjoyed it. So I highly recommend it.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks so much, Geoff.